Awesome. I am so excited to introduce our second speaker of the night. Our second speaker of the night is Erica, and she is the host of You're Not a Bad Person, which is a really cool new podcast that just launched. And Erica also has 3 fun facts. So she has a lip tattoo that she got in a bar in Bali that initially said boss, and now it's partially faded and reads puss. And this is what dollar signs, I wish I had a picture of this. She thinks society should collectively boycott goat cheese. And if she could pick 2 scents to describe her teenage years, it would be spiced rum and horse manure. Erica, come on up and share your fuck up.
Okay, how is everyone tonight? The wound is fresh, and I'm going to try to keep this to 10 minutes. But let's get started. So everything started back in 2018 when I was in bodybuilding. So I was a former bikini competitor. And when you're competing in bodybuilding, obviously you can't have cake, you can't have cookies, you can't have donuts. You can't have all the things that I love so much. So I got really good at manipulating lots of delicious recipes and adding protein to them, making them low sugar. And for fun, I would post them on my Instagram page. So I had a food page called Erica Foodie. And I would put every single recipe out on there just for fun. And I would get hundreds of comments, hundreds of messages. Everyone loved what I was doing. And I got the question, would you ever sell these? A lot of the things that I made. And this is going to come full circle. So I'll try to keep it quick. But this one particular product that recipe that I always posted was these cookie dough bites. So they had protein, they were low sugar, they were super clean. I would just roll a bunch of them, put them in the freezer, and then have them as a little snack in the morning. And everyone seemed to love them. They were always the recipe that popped off. So after I competed in bodybuilding, I decided, okay, so I'm working my 9-to-5 job. I had my bodybuilding show, and I'm someone who always has to be working towards a goal. I always have to have something on the horizon, and the job that I had, I so deeply hated. You needed a psychology degree to get this job, and I was scanning documents, answering phones, surrounded by middle-aged women who didn't like me very much, truthfully. And I got to a point where I quit the job, and I decided to go to Southeast Asia for 3 months, like every 20-something-year-old does when they're having an existential crisis. So what kind of pushed me to make this decision to quit my job was listening to a podcast. And this podcast that I listened to at my desk every day was an entrepreneurship podcast. And I grew up in a small town of 25,000 people. I've never been exposed to entrepreneurship before. And I thought, wow, you can build a business and you don't need business experience? Holy fuck, I want to try that. So I had the seed planted in my head, and I knew I wanted to do that. So I went on this trip to try to find myself. And on this trip, I somehow, and I don't know if you believe in the universe or signs or God or whatever, but I kept running into entrepreneurs. And the one thing that I found that everyone had in common who had their own businesses is that when they spoke about what they did, their faces would light up. And I could feel that energy radiate off of them when I had conversations with them. And I thought to myself, man, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I want that. I want that feeling. I don't ever want to have the Sunday scaries again. That's the worst feeling. I don't want to have a life where I have to live for the weekends. I want every day to feel like a weekend. And so after my trip, I got home, and the first thing that I did was Google business workshop near me. So I found a business resource center, and I drove 45 minutes to learn how to write a business plan, how to market a product, and how to manage cash flow, which I never really got good at that part. And you'll see why. And I didn't know what product I was gonna create, so I racked my brain, and the idea that I landed on was the protein cookie dough bites that I made because it was something that I was really good at. People loved it, and I enjoyed making them. I loved baking. So I decided to launch a protein cookie dough company. And I called it bro dough because I was a bro. I was going to call it pro dough, but there's this thing called trademarks, and that was taken already, unfortunately. So I found a roommate on Kijiji. I moved to a new city. I moved to Ottawa. That was 6 hours away. And I moved in with this woman who I'd never met before. And I remember starting the business out of our apartment. And she didn't love that, but she was a trooper. And I would go into the kitchen at night when they had off-peak hours. I saved 30%, and I would make hundreds of jars of cookie dough. And this was 3 months before the pandemic. My first month, I think I sold 15 jars, and I think 10 of them were my friends and my family. And luckily for me, when the pandemic hit, it was a blessing in disguise because I started posting on TikTok. And I eventually grew my account to almost 200,000 followers, and I started posting on LinkedIn, and I started going viral. And I remember hearing my Shopify notification go off one day when I had my first viral video, and I thought it was broken. It was like ching, 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 and I'm like, oh fuck, like half my inventory is in my living room, half's in the kitchen. So I remember at that moment, I realized, okay, this is an actual business, and I need to start outsourcing operations. Like I can't keep screwing lids on cookie jars until my hands bleed, you know? Like I gotta grow this thing. So I was selling direct to consumer for about 2 years, and my product's refrigerated, so you can only imagine how many emails I got from customers complaining about moldy cookie dough arriving at their doorstep. Not a good time. So I thought, okay, this isn't working. We're gonna try retail because retail is the move, and that's where you make all the money. Said no one ever. Worst mistake ever. If anyone's in CPG. So I thought, okay, cool. So things were going really great. And when things are going good and you're on a high and money is coming in and you have all this growth and you're getting yes to all these amazing retailers, you take on some debt. And when you take on this debt, you're just signing that dotted line and you're not reading stuff, because I don't do that. I just sign things. And I personally guaranteed all this debt, all of it. And it wasn't a fixed interest rate either. So I got the contract. Oh, we're gonna give you, 3.75% interest. Wow, that's so good. Cool, like let's do it. But it's not fixed. So that 3.75 turns into 10, turns into 11, it grows. So I ended up launching my cookie dough jars into retail. And this was my first fail. So I spent about 100 hours doing demos in stores. And please, if you ever go into a grocery store and you see someone handing out samples and it's a small business, just eat it. Just eat it. They're likely the founder or there's someone from their team and they're there on their Friday night or their Saturday handing out samples. And that they just want someone to eat it and give them some feedback, truly. And a lot of people that were trying my product were like, I don't understand it. Why is the tub so big? Why is there so many calories in it? It's supposed to be healthy. Why is it next to Pillsbury? There was just so many things that were wrong with this. And I remember one night I had someone come up to me, and it just goes to show everything you see on the surface level is hardly ever the truth. Someone came up to me and he said, I follow you and you're crushing it. You're doing amazing. You must be making millions. And I was in Fortino's, in a cookie bucket hat on a Friday night at 8 p.m. So I was flattered, but I was in fact not crushing it. So I was determined to make this work. So I decided, okay, we're gonna delist that product. And so I basically notified all my retail partners, we were at about 100 stores, that we were gonna discontinue it. And I was like, okay, we're going back into R&D. I'm gonna change everything about the product and make all of the improvements that people told me they wanted to see. They wanted it to be gluten-free, they wanted single serve, they wanted it to be more affordable, they wanted cleaner ingredients. So we went into this product development, and it lasted about 6 months. And as you can imagine, 6 months of not selling anything. So I had those principal payments coming out of my bank account, and I accumulated over $200,000 worth of debt. And it added up very, very, very quickly. And I also raised a little bit of money, but when you're in CPG, money goes like that. You turn around and it's gone. It's like you're throwing your money in a tornado. and it's gone. So everything started to go absolutely sideways. But before that, I got a Whole Foods listing, which is so exciting. It's 14 stores, 14. In the US, it's about 400. So I remember getting this email from my broker when I was on the plane, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we made it, we're in Whole Foods. And I'd had no idea that there were only 14 locations, which I think is kind of crazy. But this is what ended up happening. So in about, I would say December, we were selling our product, everything was going really well, and then the debt caught up to me. And I basically hit a point where I couldn't afford to pay the interest, pay the principal payments. I raised some money. And also, I just knew in my gut, like that gut feeling, you know when something's not meant for you and you're on the wrong path? I had that feeling for about a year, but I was so stubborn and I just wanted to keep going, and I wanted to prove to myself, like, I have to make this work. But everything was working against me. And there's one quote that I heard a few weeks ago, and it said, if you have everything coming at you, you're probably in the wrong lane. And I felt like I was in the wrong lane on a highway, going 150 miles per hour. So I started getting phone calls. So at first I tried to negotiate with a lot of the lenders, FCC, BDC, Futurepreneur. They were not having it. They were reduced at 15%, which that's not much for me. So I was getting 20 phone calls a day. Futurepreneur ended up sending someone to my dad's house looking for me to serve me, and my dad didn't know what was going on at the time. So my dad was confused, and I'm like, Dad, everything is okay. Don't worry. And then I remember getting this text message from him, and I go to my roommates, and I'm like, guys, if anyone comes to the house, don't answer the door. And then after that, I got a call from a private investigator looking for me because I didn't have my address listed anywhere. And then BDC sued me on Easter. Threatens me with the lawsuit. And then I had to file for bankruptcy. So this was at the end of March, and unfortunately, because I had accumulated so much debt, and I didn't really have any collateral or assets of the company, I had to put everything on myself. And the only way out of this situation was to file for bankruptcy. So don't ask me about my credit score. And I just want to share this. This is one thing that my friend showed me. I remember when I was going through this, I was in the thick of this. This just happened this year, so the wound is still pretty fresh. But I remember him saying, just Google all of the successful entrepreneurs that have filed bankruptcy. And I'm like, okay. So I did that. And these are the names that came up. Henry Ford, Donald Trump, Milton Hershey also filed for bankruptcy. And I think that just really put things into perspective for me. And also, on average, 300 Canadians file for bankruptcy every day. And a lot of the people in your life, or some people in your life, have maybe filed for bankruptcy in their life and you don't even know it because there's such a stigma attached to it. But I think it's a badge of honor. I think it means you took big swings, you tried something, you took a risk. And 7 years, it'll come back. My credit score will come back. And I love this quote from Albert Einstein, failure is success in progress. And that is all. And I will leave you with, don't ever get debt and have a personal guarantee on it because it'll fuck you up. Thank you.
Erica, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for being so vulnerable, and thank you for coming back as a repeat offender to share an update on your story. I think it's really brave to speak not once, but twice at Fuckup Nights, and we really wish you amazing success with your podcast and your next ventures. I know you're going to do some really incredible things, and you've learned a lot.